Welcome to the Writing Gals, 4 sweet romance authors staying up late as we talk about writing. We're sorry for the delay tonight. My town is having this big storm right now, and like 3,000 people are out of power, and my internet has just been kind of crazy. So we're really hoping it will hold up. It's doing a little better right now. But we are excited to talk to you about critique groups tonight. We've had a few people asking us like how we work our critique group and just other questions about them. So we're excited to talk about that. But first, we wanted to give an update on where we're at with our writing. So you can, see that we're just regular writers like you. So what have you been up to, Victorine?
Well, I just published a book and I'm super excited about it. It's a Christmas romance. It's called Christmas with the Recluse, and it's kind of a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast retelling a little bit, because he's like the really grumpy guy and she's all fun and happy and everything. So it just went live like 24 hours ago. So I'm super happy and doing the slow release. So I'm not really announcing it quite yet, and getting really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I got to hear the first 2 chapters and they were super fun. And it seemed like you wrote it like super fast. I'm like, what?
That was fast. Yeah, that was fast. I started it like 2 days before the month started. So
yeah, that's crazy. Good job.
Thanks.
Michelle, what have you been doing?
Like Victorine, I've been launching a book, and mine has been out 2 days longer than Amy's has, because she released one too. She'll talk about it in a minute. We've all just been putting them out with Christmas coming, and it's doing good. It's ranking well. It's in the 600s, and I hope to get it a little bit higher. But what's really driving me crazy right now is my 3rd story. So normally during launch, I'm like all just watching my numbers, and I can't write and I can't focus. And right now I'm desperately trying to finish a book while launching one, and I'm finding it very difficult, especially since I have a little bit of possible burnout going on here. So anyway, I'm just hoping that I can really make numbers happen, like word counts happen the next couple of days. Because this Sugar Plums and Mistletoe is out, scheduled to be on the 10th or the 12th of December, and that's like right around the corner.
Yeah, you can do it though.
I can do it.
Awesome. Got some good words down today. So
I did. So that's me.
Awesome. And what about you, Amy?
Well, Michelle just gave away what I'm doing. I'm just kidding. I just released Second Chance Mistletoe Kisses. And I honestly don't remember what day I released it. I've been releasing so much lately that I'm just like, sure, yeah, there's a book out. I don't know. I'm so tired. And I realized, I was telling my husband, I was like, I have written and released 4 books in like a month and a half. No wonder I'm tired of writing. So I've been taking my sweet time finishing this last book, and I just hit 30,000 words today. It's meant to be a novella. I may try and drag it out just to get some more, because it always just feels a little rushed at the end. So I might go back and add a few more scenes in, just kind of like fill it out a little bit. But it's a really fun story. I've had a lot of fun with these characters because, I've been watching Pretty Little Liars to get like YA, like, inspiration. And like this last scene or 2 I was writing, she's super depressed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so happy I was watching that show, because one of the girls is like majorly depressed in season 3. So I just based it off of her. So it was great. And then, so that book's coming out, and then I'm going to plot my 2019 year and what I have going on. We've got a lot of new releases coming out in the beginning of the year, and just working on figuring that stuff out. So kind of taking some business time now that this book is almost wrapping up, and focusing on my plans for 2019, which I can't believe it's almost 2019. It's crazy.
I know.
But a whirlwind year, definitely.
Yeah, you've been writing a lot, so you should take a little break and take the holidays off at least. That's awesome. Definitely inspiring. So for me, I have just been taking it easy because I kind of burned myself out with my last 2 books. I I wrote them way fast for me. But I'm slowly getting back into writing again, and I wrote my first chapter today, which is good. So hopefully it'll do well. And I'm also been launching my mistletoe mix-up also. I had my big push day yesterday, and it's doing pretty good. So that's been fun. Yep. So
Well, and I think it's funny that we talk about burnout, but burnout only lasts for like 3 days, and then your brain starts going, okay, now I got to write my next book. What's my next book? Like, I'm already thinking about my next book before I've even finished this book. And I'm tired of writing, but once you get into that habit, it's really hard to break and to be like, all right, I have to relax, because your mind, now that we're authors, it just goes.
Yeah.
Taking a break to me sounds like not having an immediate deadline. That's what a break sounds like to me, where I can just write because I want to write and get something done, but I don't feel so much pressure.
Yeah, and that's how I've been with this one, because I decided, so that I don't go crazy, that I'm going to write the book that I have an actual deadline for next, but that one's not due. That won't be published till like April. So I'm like not feeling like super motivated to start writing, like I got lots of time. But no, I need to make myself write it. So I'm telling myself it has to be done by the middle of January. So hopefully that will help me be more motivated to write. So yep. So that's what's been going on. So we had quite a few questions about critique groups, and so we're planning to answer those questions first, just kind of like, because there's some of our viewers that haven't been in critique groups before, and then others that are just like kind of curious about how our critique group works. And so we thought it would be good to answer the questions first, and then we're going to actually do like a live critique, as long as, my internet keeps working. Since I did just do my first chapter, I'll read my chapter, and these ladies will critique it, because they're experts at critiquing, and my chapters usually need a lot of work at the beginning. So it'll be just a great show for everyone. So hopefully I won't be ashamed of my writing after this, but that's what we will be doing. So the first question that we had is from Mary Wernke. Sorry, I can't say that last name super well. So she asks, how is a critique group different than a beta reader or a professional editor?
Okay, so for me, I use the critique group for more nitpicky things. Like, I will write a chapter and then I will present it to my critique group first. So they are kind of almost like my alpha readers, and they will help me shape and form where the story is going. So if for some reason I put something in there that's just really unbelievable and I really need to change a big story structure thing, then my critique group will say, you know what, they really wouldn't be, doing that. You need to change, the direction. And so that way I can make sure I'm going in the right direction. And then for beta readers, I give them the complete full manuscript, and then let them tell me maybe smaller things that I can change to smooth out some of the rough edges and make sure overall it's working for them. So that's the difference for me.
Yeah, that's how they work for me too.
And for me, the critique group is more of an instantaneous response to my chapter, because we only do chapter or two at a time. So they know exactly they're only presented with a certain amount of information. But what's good about staying with a critique group and going every week is you learn each other's characters. And so you can be like, yeah, I don't think that character would do that, or I don't know if they would say that. And it kind of helps keep you accountable for the rest of your book. I've noticed if I get a critique group for the first 6 or 7 of chapters of my book, that everything is pretty much smooth sailing from there, because I've got everything set up. And I still remember a time I read a chapter, and it was my first ever chapter, and Victorine was like, I don't know what I don't know what you're doing here, Amy. And I was like, oh, okay. So I need to go rewrite that whole thing. But it was really helpful, because then I stopped and I reevaluated where I was going. And then I moved forward. So we are going to scare anybody who watches this to never get a critique from Victory.
Well, they'll get to see it live on my chapter. So
Great. All of
That's
these
really scary.
no, but yeah, and I think that what you said about getting it critiqued at the first, but then not needing it as much at the rest of the story. I think a lot of that is because you have been writing for so long and you have a lot of experience and you really got a handle on writing a story. But like for me, when I first started in a critique group, we did it a little differently back in the day, where we would we only met every other week because it was a much slower thing, and we would we'd send our chapters in through Google Docs, and then we would each read it on our own time, make notes, and it was a lot nitpickier back then because we were just getting started. We needed a lot more guidance on certain things, and then we would meet together at someone's house and just kind of go over everything that we had seen, and we'd go through the whole book, and so that would sometimes take like 9 months to get through a whole book, so much slower than what we do now. But so definitely at different stages of your career, you will need different things. So
yeah, and I'd also add that for us, the way we function as a group now is we tend to only go through our first few chapters, and because of the quick schedule that we're on, for one thing. But we've also found that that's where it's most effective for us, because if you can get your story and your plot and your characters all lined up in the beginning, then we know what we're doing the rest of the way. Those are usually the places at the beginning where we get ourselves into trouble. And so it's kind of our first line of defense to not have to go back and rewrite our story multiple times, right? And another thing that's important, I think, about critique groups, it's different from beta reading and editing, is that we work together in a different way because we are colleagues and we're all writing. So we're learning from each other all the time. And we are able to have both sides of the process. So if you send it to a beta reader, you don't always swap for beta reading, and obviously you don't edit an editor. And so by me giving these ladies critique as well as getting it from them, it allows me to learn that much faster because I'm listening to everybody else's story and I'm using critical thinking to try and figure out, is this working, if that's not working? And so it's just this constant exercise of 4 different stories to look at and learn from every single time we meet together. And I find that extremely helpful.
Yeah. That is awesome. Any more comments on that question, or do we move to next? My computer, I think, is freezing. So is everyone still there?
I think we can move on. You're still there.
Okay, sorry.
You're still there.
Okay. So our next question is from Nikki Marie, and she asks, "Writing gals, start your group." And so Amy kind of started it for me.
How did we start the writing gals?
Our critique group.
Our critique group.
Oh, well, we joined something called a group called LDS Beta Readers, and that's how we all met, because we're all part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's what the LDS stand for. So we knew that we would find people who didn't really write spicy romance, which was a big concern for us. And then we just kind of have been in different critique groups at different times. One time it was just me and Michelle with a group of people. We joined a Thursday night group as a group of people. Victorine started a critique group, so we joined that one. It's a Tuesday one. And that's when Judy joined in with us. And so we've kind of just culled it down to people who can come on a consistent basis at a specific time. It's pretty much how we started it.
Yeah, when our schedules all started changing for various reasons, we found it difficult to do the critique groups in the evening especially, and sometimes we were working with different genres and we wanted to focus on romance. So it just kind of developed over time.
Well, and sometimes we do like a rapid fire critique group. So like me and Judy, since we're both doing YA, we've done it where I share 6,000 words and she shares 6,000 words, and we critique it, just me and her, and we will meet every day trying to get our books ready to go. So we kind of base it off the needs of the people in the group. Is kind of how we work now. But we talk on a daily basis. So I could be like, I need help with this chapter, who can get on? And everyone will be like, I can, or no, I can't. And then it's just whoever is available helps.
Yeah. And I think that's what everybody should do is understand going into a critique group that it's not going to stay the same forever. It might not work out. It might not be a good fit. Sometimes your family needs are going to change and, you won't be able to meet with that group anymore. I was involved with a critique group at my local library, and it was great at first. And then different people were joining, and they were bringing erotica to critique, and that was uncomfortable for me. And so that was something that I didn't want to have to put myself through all the time, which I felt very sad about. But luckily, that's when I found the critique groups online, and it's worked out really well for me because I can meet with people all over the country through various online meeting platforms. And so I can find people that I want to work with, and I'm not tied to who is local. So, but there are a lot of really great local groups wherever you are. I know groups all over the country that my friends are part of that are local. And I think those are great. So you just need to look and see what's available. If you join LDS Beta Readers Facebook group, they they have a lot of people there in multiple genres that like to write clean fiction, and you can possibly find people to work with there. I used to, I kind of still am the critique group coordinator over there, but it's developed into such a kind of a massive thing that it's kind of just running itself now. There's actually a lady in Texas. Her name, she goes by Tex. She actually runs sort of a not-for-profit organization that helps to connect people with critique groups all across Texas, which I think is really cool. I was trying to look up her information the other day, but if anybody on here is interested in that, you live in Texas, you want to know more, I'll get you her email and you can get in touch with her, see if she's still doing it. But just look around. They're going to be everywhere. And if you can't find what you need, then find authors that you have a lot in common with and say, hey, do you guys want to try, critiquing for each other?
Yeah, awesome. Great point. So Stephanie Anderson asked, how do you go about finding critique groups specific for your genre? And I think that kind of fits with what Michelle just said. But any other thoughts for finding them specific for a genre?
I would say if you're having trouble finding other people in your genre, start a critique group. There's nothing wrong with you going out and saying, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I would like in my critique group. Is anybody interested? And join some of these massive groups of authors. There are some Facebook groups that have thousands of authors in there. And go on and seek out other authors in there and ask them specifically, would you like to join a critique group with me?
That's great. Okay, so any other thoughts with that before I do that? Sorry, I'm kind of off because my internet. I'm like, oh, is it bad?
Well, I will say that the way that we run our critique group is not necessarily the only way to run a critique group, because I have helped to facilitate so many other critique groups. There are some that work exclusively by emailing chapters back and forth to each other. There are some that meet once a month or once a week or twice a week or twice a month. In the day and the evening. So the time doesn't even matter. The format doesn't matter. Sometimes everybody reads everything ahead, and then the only thing you do when you meet together is give feedback. Some groups like to read aloud like we do, so that you can kind of hear the author's voice and get it in a, different sort of like immediate response kind of critique. So there's a lot of different ways to run a critique group out there. And so when you're working to find one or build one, you may just keep in mind that that's going to be a factor as you're creating one, to know how best to meet the needs of the people in your group. And that can change too over time. You can just say, hey, this isn't working. Let's try this.
Yeah. There's also websites like critiquecircle.com, which is how I started my critique group way back when I first started writing. I didn't know anybody that wrote. And so I started putting chapters up on critiquecircle.com. And that's where I learned a lot about writing just from doing that. So if you don't know anybody, you can log on to one of those websites.
Yeah, awesome.
I feel like I should read ahead in the questions before I make any further comment. But I want to say this, and if it comes up again, we'll talk about it then, or not talk about it. I think it's really important for people to understand when a critique group has become unhealthy. It's normal to come away from a critique feeling a little bit frustrated or down or even annoyed, because when you put your work out and then people tell you there's something that they don't like about it, there's an immediate emotional response to that. And we just all have to learn to be professional and take it, and think about it and process it appropriately. But if somebody is consistently only giving you negative feedback and they're making you feel like you want to quit, or like you don't want to go on, or like you must be the worst writer in the whole world, then that's not healthy. You should always be able to get to a place where you know that this person is trying to help you and that they want to make you a better writer and improve your manuscript. So if you don't trust that person and you don't have a positive relationship with them, then you need to be able to say, this isn't working for me, and move on, and not feel like that person's opinion matters to the point that you quit writing. And I've seen that happen to so many authors where they get in that situation. So just remember, it's not you, it's them. They are saying things that are hurting you and holding you back. And you need to just step away from it and find people who are able to support and uplift you, because those people are out there. And don't let your critique group become something that is hurtful.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I have experience with that. So. Not with these videos though, because they're awesome. So stay forever. Okay. So our next question is, do you think it's important to have a local writing critique partner, or does online work just as well? So for me, online works great. And I don't need the local anymore. So
I've done both local groups and online, and they both have worked great for me. I think there's benefits to meeting in person that you may not get online, but there's also benefits to being able to form maybe a more specific group for your genre, or a group of people who are all looking in the same direction. Like for the Writing Gals, we all wanted to write to market, and that was our goal, is to write to market and make money. And I think our group was kind of a power group because we all had that same goal.
yeah, definitely.
So besides my library experience, I had another local writers group that I loved and was made up of people that I was friends with. And it was wonderful until everybody started moving. And then it just kind of fell apart. And we're still all friends, but we're no longer local friends. And so that's kind of the good thing about an online group, is that wherever anybody goes, you just can still stay in touch the way you always did before. So,
yeah. Okay, so the next question is from Danielle Murray, and she asks, how frequently do you meet? How much material do you cover each time? Do you critique each other's work for mental problems during the stage, or do you only go over published work? Thank you. Super excited for this one. Let me kind of over that we were going every week, but in critique groups that met every 2 weeks, and then some that meet, twice a week. So it depends on the needs of the group.
So I think one of us should repeat the question a little bit, because Judy was breaking up some.
Darn it.
So the
I
question
can
was
do it.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, you're fine. You do it.
You go. No, you go. No, you go. How frequently do you meet? How much material do you plan to cover each time? Do you critique each other's work for developmental problems during the drafting stage, or do you only go over polished work?
Well, for us, or I can answer that. For us, we meet as often as we need. And then I think as you go along, you find people who mesh really well with you in your critique. And you'll find people that are at like the same writing level as you. And then you kind of decide for each other what you want. And so sometimes we'll be like, okay, this is my final draft. I want you to pick out any of the words that are misspelled. But you can do that in critique group. We don't do that. So there's times where we'll be like, I really don't know what I was trying to say in that sentence because it's all chopped up and weird. And we know when we're reading, we tell them, okay, this is like my first draft. I literally just vomited up this morning and here you go. I hope you can follow my train of thought. So we don't ask for, line edits or misspelled words or anything like that. We just, sometimes I'll be like, that's a weird word to use for that, instance. And because it makes me think of something else. And that's probably the farthest I get with critiquing words at all. We're just more, where's my plot? Do you see where I'm going? Do you know what I'm trying to accomplish here? And if I'm not, where can I make it better? Or where would you want? And sometimes it's like, you didn't do this, but I really wanted to see you do this or add this element. It would have been really funny if you had put this part in. And that's, you don't have to do it. It's just for me as a reader, I was like, oh, I was really hoping that this would happen and it didn't. And you should try it because it might be funny and, that sort of thing. So that's more what we do in terms of our critique.
Cool. Awesome. Am I cutting out now? Okay. Sorry. Oh, I'm excited for snow, but it's not being nice to me right now. Okay. So Lynn Washington asks, or she said, so happy to hear this. About halfway through Victorine's book on writing, Swoonworthy Sweet Romance, she mentions that her writing group hated her hero at first. I almost cried, feeling so lonely. I've never had a critique/writing group. Tried to have a critique partner once, but she said the voice in my story was so bad that she couldn't read it. I felt like, okay, voice is part of the polishing phase. Right now, I just want to know if the framework of the story, characters, conflict, plot was in good working order. What can you do when your critique partner refuses to read your work?
Find another critique partner.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, time to go searching for, and I would probably try to find more than one, because a lot of times if someone says, well, this isn't working for me, I want to know, is it just them or would 10 people say that? So yeah, I would try to find some more people, and that's where you'd go looking online in groups or like critiquecircle.com or places like that.
And I would say that actually, since you were talking about voice so much, I would actually say that is something you can talk about in a critique group. That's important. And it's something that, especially if you're reading aloud to each other, it can be easier to pick up. But voice is a very kind of ephemeral thing. It's really hard to pin down and structure and say, this is how I'm going to create my voice or my character's voice. But sometimes you can receive feedback like, this sounds really stilted. It doesn't really match the, your usual voice, or you can say your character doesn't sound like a teenager if you're talking about character voice. So, I wouldn't say to throw out big picture things in any critique group. I don't think you should focus on the things that a copy editor and a proof editor will help you with. But I think big picture things, which voice is one of those, is definitely something that critique group is good for. And if you're not meshing with somebody, remember when you put your book out, there's going to be people that are going to give you 5-star reviews and people are going to give you 1-star reviews, just because different people like different things. And if somebody doesn't like your writing, it doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's not good for them. So that's why you say, okay, well, clearly, this isn't something that's going to work well for either of us. So let's, go find someone that we can both work with somewhere else. And just sometimes it's tricky to break apart a relationship like that, but just let them know that you just want both of you to find somebody who can help you be the best you can be.
Well, and I think that comes down to, as a critique partner, understanding where you're imposing yourself on someone else's story. Instead of giving advice, you're telling them, no, you shouldn't write it that way. You should write it this way. And it can be a fine line to write or to talk about that, to be like, I don't understand where you're going with this plot, versus I think your character's dumb and they need to do this. There's two different things you're talking about there. Like, I did not like the 5th book of Harry Potter, to the point where I closed the book and have never picked up another Harry Potter past then. Now, if I had been in J.K. Rowling's critique group and I would have said, this is awful, I don't like this, and she changed it, think of how millions of people would be very upset that she changed the 5th book of Harry Potter because I didn't like it. Now, because I didn't like Harry Potter's voice and I didn't want to read about a 15-year-old whiny boy. But everybody says it was so perfect and ingenious because it's exactly how a 15-year-old boy would have acted at that age. And I was like, well, I don't want to read that. So now, having told her that, now if I'd been like, I'm confused about this magic plot and how this works, that would be something to critique, versus I don't like your voice, you need to change it. Because sometimes people's voice just don't mesh. I've had that where people said, this person doesn't sound this way, or this voice is weird, or your voice is something. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to change my voice, so I don't know how to help you in that situation. And if I feel good about my story and I like it, great. I'm just going to keep it, because, Brandon Sanderson says rule of 3. If 3 people say the same thing, then maybe you should change it. If 3 people don't say the same thing, then it's up to you, and don't change it. But you do have to get 3 people. So you can't be like, well, I'm not going to change anything you said because you're the only one who said it. Now, if you don't have 3 people, you should find 3 people or 4 people or 5 people and have them look it over. And then if they all say, you need to change this, or this is confusing, then you need to look at more closely.
And just to be contrary, it's interesting too. We've all had, I think, experiences where we've given advice to people repeatedly and they don't listen, and that's also something that can be a strain in a critique group. So that's something to take into account, is that sometimes it's not a good fit if you're working with people and they're not interested in actually taking any kind of advice or critique or even consider it. So you want to find people who can give and take equally.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so our next question is from Eileen Omosa, and she asks, which works better, to have a critique group with diverse members in terms of genre, or limit to people who read and write in your type of genre? Thanks.
I think you can answer this one perfectly, Judy, because don't you, your first critique group, what did you always say they told you?
Yeah, so my first critique group, they did not write romance, and they did not understand the romance, and they just thought nothing was happening. I'm like, no, they totally just like touched hands, or he just like looked at her like, big things are happening, people, like you should. Yeah. So I don't know, it depends. Like, so for me, my first one was really good for just helping me learn how to do like other kind of plot stuff, and just helped me with the early writing stages. But I do prefer having my critique partners to know and understand my genre, because each genre is so different, and there are so many intricate things that you that helps for your critique partners to know and understand, so that they can give you a good, worthwhile critique and help you get your book to where it needs to be.
I agree with that. And especially if you are writing to market, you really need advice from people who understand that particular market that you're writing in, because there's a lot of little nuances, like you said, to romance that you don't need in a thriller, and a lot was happening in your book where other people were bored with it because they weren't romance readers. And so
nothing was blowing up. So I was like, nothing's happening. So whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Any more thoughts on that, or should I keep going? Probably keep going because we're kind of late.
I'd say keep going.
Okay. So we'll go to this one from Mindy Struck. She says, can you address some ways to extricate yourself from a toxic group? This is a hard business and you never want to burn a bridge, but sometimes a group is just not right for you. Right for you. And even worse, it is damaging. So how do you get out without hurting feelings? I actually did this once. And I took I was the scaredy cat way out, I guess, because I just like, it had gone on for a really long time, just not being a good environment for me. And after a particularly like bad critique, because we did it where we read our chapters not together. And so we'd sent that through email, and I could see their comments before we were going to meet, and they were just like, it was really not so great for me. And so I just, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I couldn't even face them. And so I just emailed them all, and it was working with you for this amount of time. I could get the email nice or whatever, but I just move on to this. So that's how I got out. And I don't know if that's the best way, but it's the way.
With my library group, I wrote a scathing email. So, but I didn't care about hurting feelings there. In personal groups, when I had to leave, it's been a sad thing, because I was friends with them, and it just wasn't something that I could continue doing because of, times mostly. And so it was just a matter of, I'm so sorry, this time isn't working for me anymore. Let's stay in touch. Let's stay friends. And I have, for the most part, been able to stay in touch with people and continue to collaborate with them in different ways. It just wasn't something that was going to work out, with a weekly meeting. And so it's kind of a cool thing to move on and build different groups, because you can, still stay in contact with those people. So I think as long as you're able to let them know that you still want to, be part of their journey and collaborate with them in different ways, support each other, then you don't have to worry about hurting feelings so much.
I really want to read this scathing email now.
Yeah, we all want to know. What did you
I want to
say?
see the side of you, Michelle.
I was just really frustrated about the content at a public library. I mean, it wasn't just erotica. It was pedophilia on one of them, which obviously I had a big issue with. And I was frustrated that the public library was a forum for that kind of thing. So I just let them know my feelings on that. And I was really frustrated with their policy that they didn't restrict content of any kind. And I feel like certain content like that should be restricted. And so when it's damaging and illegal in real life, it should be restricted, in my opinion. So anyway,
that's really interesting, because I was in a very similar group with that going on as well. And several of us had to leave that group for that very reason.
Yeah. So, which, I think I basically told them I don't think that this is appropriate, that this is being allowed. And if you should ever get your act together and create a group where I would be more comfortable, I'd be happy to come back. And I never heard back from anybody. I didn't expect to. It was actually the second time I attempted to use this critique group, because I'd heard that people had changed. Anyway, just a mess, personally.
Well, when we left the group, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we left our group, it was several of us, and we just told everybody, we wanted to form a group that had the same goal, because all of us wanted to indie publish, and there were a lot of other people in the other group that didn't have that goal and didn't understand why we were wanting to get together and start reading our chapter right away, rather than talking for half an hour and wasting our time together. And so we kind of just politely said, we're breaking off because we want to, go in this direction. You're great, but that's why we're leaving. So that's kind of what we said.
And I think too, as you you get more established in your career, your time becomes very valuable. And I think if it's toxic or not, or it's just not working, you can just say, I just don't have time for this anymore. And I don't want to be a flaky person. So I'm going to let you know, here's where I stand and I can't come back. And you just leave it at that. You don't have to say, I mean, your time is probably more valuable and you're going to be a better person for not going just because you are going to go to a retreat group you want to be in, or you have that for a time that works for you. Because it's hard when you have people who are gone for a long time and then come back and you're reading, 7 chapters and they're trying to critique you, and you're like, well, if you had been here for the last 3 weeks, you would have known that X, Y, or Z happened that led up to this, and I covered all of that previously. So it's hard to have, especially a story that's going consistently, to have people who aren't coming consistently. So if you're going to be that person, then it's better for your group to say, I can't make this work. Find somebody else who can make it work at that same time. And that will be better for everybody. So as long as you don't write scathing emails to people, then you should be good. Has Judy returned back to us?
Yeah, am I back now? My thing went. Can you hear me now? One's answering. You're all muted. Okay, you're nodding. Okay, sorry. This is okay. So, I'm guessing you didn't move on to the next without me. So let's go to, from Matthew Lynch. He asked, "What if you get mixed advice in your critique group? How do you use or pass follow?" I think Michelle or anyone, when you guys already talked about the rule to me about both from Brandon Sanderson, getting different advice and seeing which one you would like. Most people are saying, or if you agree with it also.
Well, I think sometimes it can feel hard at first, and sometimes you need to take some time to just process what has been said to you and be open. So I'm not saying if you automatically don't agree with what somebody says, then just shut them down. Be open to it. Remove yourself from the situation. Sometimes when I get paper critique backs, I'll read through all the comments and I'll pull off that Band-Aid, and then I won't touch my manuscript for like a day, just so those comments can kind of settle in. And then I can look at it with fresh eyes the next day and be like, okay, is there truth to what they said? Do I agree with what they said? And if I go with what they said, does it make my book better? Because if it makes your book better, even if it's hurtful for you to do, then you should probably do it. Because inevitably, we want your reader to be happy. You want your reader to be satisfied. And if following that path gets it that way, then you should do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think it's important, and I don't want this to sound awful and pretentious, but you kind of have to look at who's giving you the advice, because if it's somebody who doesn't write in your genre, who doesn't understand what you're trying to do, it may not be the best advice for you. You also, if it is somebody who is writing in your genre and who is selling really well in your genre, they probably know what they're talking about. So it sounds terrible to say, but you want to look at where the advice is coming from as well, because if it's somebody selling really well in your genre, you probably want to give a little bit more weight to what they say than if it's someone who only writes poetry and has never written prose, what you're writing. So just something to consider.
Definitely. So you kind of answered the next question, so I'll move on to this next one from Stacy Claflin. She asked, do you use your critique group in addition to or in place of beta readers? And so Victorine kind of answered that, where we use the critique group and then the beta readers, and that's kind of what we all do, right? Okay. Okay, so Remy London's question is going to lead us into the next part. So her question is, I'm not good at critiquing. How do I get better at it? Are there more specific things I'd be looking for? Or can I just read like a normal person reading a book and then tell them if anything felt off?
Well, I think there's room for every type of beta reader in your arsenal of beta readers, because you're going to find that beta reader who is so harsh that makes you want to say, I will never open my computer up again and I will never write. But then you want those other beta readers to balance them out who just love to read. And then they get back to you and they say, here are a couple things that I saw, but overall I loved the story and it was great and it was perfect. I mean, if you especially to balance out those really harsh ones, it's good to have those as well. But what I do is when I critique, I just listen. And if I feel anything is off or I feel like I could add something, I just say what I think. And then hopefully I always tell them, I know Victorina says this too, this is my opinion. You can take as little or as much as you want, and it will not offend me in any way whatsoever what you decide. So you want to find critique people who are like that, but also be that way yourself. Don't feel like you can't say something. Be nice about it. And also balance out, you know, for every one thing you say wrong, tell the reader that you laughed at a certain part, or writer. Tell them, give them a smiley face, say that's hilarious, or this was so funny, or I love this character, and I, you know, wish he existed in real life because then he'd be my husband, you know? So like do all those things that you think good and bad, because it can mean a lot to the writer, and they might be more apt to listen to what you have to say.
Perfect. There's also beta reader worksheets out there on Critique Circle. I know they have templates for different kinds of stories where you can go, it'll ask you questions that you can ponder over as you read. Also, the more you read books about how to write and story structure and dialogue and things like that, the more knowledgeable you'll feel when you go to critique somebody else.
And so what's really good about a critique group is that these people will help you grow because they know what your struggles are. They know where you're weak as a writer, and they can tell you, hey, you know, like, look at you. It wasn't insta love this time. Or, hey, look at you. You started off, you know, without doing a whole page of boring backstory this time. You know, like they can encourage you and they could touch base with you on things. And instead of going through, oh, every single story line in this paragraph starts with the letter I, you know, and just go through your whole story and check, like, that's not very helpful in a critique group, you know. But what can be helpful is to say, you look at the way each of your sentences starts and just leave it at that, you know, like just give them gentle advice on some points of writing and let them figure it out. Let them, you know, work on it in their own time. It's not something you need to really cover a lot in critique group. And, you know, I know the things that I tend to do as a writer. One of them is that I tend to not have a lot of conflict and tension in my stories right away. And so that's something that critique groups have really helped me with, because, you know, they're the ones that they push back on me a little bit and say, hey, you know, like things are going too easy and there's, you know, like what's keeping them apart here. And, you know, and then I'm like, but I don't like to make people uncomfortable and unhappy, whereas most of these ladies like to really torture their characters. And so we're kind of a good match that way, because I learn from them how to make my characters miserable when they need to be miserable. And they know how to tell me, hey, Michelle, like, let's get these people suffering a little bit here. So that's one of the things that you become a team, and you know how to strengthen everybody based on where they need to grow. And we all have different strengths that help everybody else. So
Definitely. Okay, so I'm hoping that my computer and internet will work for this next part, because I didn't get to email everyone because my browser is not like email stuff, so I didn't get to email the chapter. So I'll just be reading it that I'm sending out. So
Do you want one of us to read it, Judy? Because you're still cutting out pretty bad.
Darn it. I can't get my thing to email to you guys. Like, I keep trying to load the page, email it, and it's not.
can you screen share?
Think it will show?
I don't know. We can try.
Okay. So I will screen share then, and click it so that my screen is sharing all the time. Okay, so someone want to read for me, since I'm still cutting out right now?
I just don't know if it will update when you scroll. That's the only thing, because you're also kind of choppy video-wise.
Okay, am I still choppy?
Well, we can see it. I can see it. Try scrolling. Did you scroll?
Yeah, I'm scrolling.
You're muted.
Oh. Muted?
No, it's not moving.
Darn it.
Internet.
Do we want to do this? We could do like critique group part 2 next week and go
It might
through
be
that.
best, yeah, to do it next week, to do the actual reading. And
Or do you want me to read a first chapter?
do you have
Yeah.
one?
I do have a first chapter you guys haven't read.
Okay, let's do that.
That
Oh,
is not
right.
the plan, but I would be happy to do that.
You're awesome, Michelle, putting yourself
Okay.
on the line.
All right. We'll get this going because I know we're running out of time. Okay, so here's the first chapter, Sawdust and Mistletoe. And I'll read kind of fast, so buckle up, everybody. The change from one holiday to another was always a relief for Ruth Haynes. When you decorated sugar cookies day in and day out, it was easy to get burned out. After weeks of jack-o'-lanterns, ghosts, and witch hats, she was now tired of pumpkins, fall leaves, and turkeys. But even though it was only November 16th, the city of Willow Falls was already moving on to Christmas. Ruth's little shop, Sugar Lips Cookie Company, took up exactly 12 feet of storefront on Main Street facing the square. Even as little as it was, the prime location was expensive. But at times like this, it was well worth it. Paying $200 to have it decorated with Christmas lights was worth it as well. If she was going to be the #1 stop for holiday treats, her shop had to look festive. And tonight was the lighting on the square event, when the city turned on the over-the-top light display that turned the downtown area into a wonderland, with nets of lights embracing every tree for several blocks. Oh, stupid Scrivener. You guys, you heard me say that. Okay. A towering fir tree covered in decorations in the middle of the square, festive music pumping through, and oh gosh. See, this is what we mean, it's a mess. The display increased the traffic going past her shop tenfold. It seemed like it got more magical every year, and she had to be ready for it. Crystal, can you fill all the cookie cases and bring out that tray of Christmas trees I have ready in the back? The crowds will be coming in soon, and I'm going out front for a minute. Sure thing, Crystal called, heading to the back. Ruth picked up the A-frame chalkboard sign she'd spent the last 20 minutes working on. Spelled out in careful red and green lettering were the words, 4 for $10 sale. Sweeten up your lips for a kiss under the mistletoe. She'd drawn an arrow pointing straight up because she was going to hang a sprig of mistletoe over their doorway. Anything to get people to stop outside her door and get a good look at the tempting cookies inside. About to go back inside for the stepladder, she paused as she saw a truck pull up in front of the shop next to hers. Seeing that it was a local sign company, she watched curiously. For the past few weeks, the windows had been papered over while the new leaseholder set up shop. Even though she came in by 5 every morning and stayed until late in the day, she'd yet to meet the owner, and there had been no hint as to what kind of store it was going to be. She was finally going to find out. It was going to be a while, though, so she got back to work. A few minutes later, she set up a 3-step ladder under the spot she wanted to hang the mistletoe with a drill in one hand and a screw-in hook in her pocket. Even on the top step, however, she had to stand on her tiptoes to drill the hole. When she tried to reach the screw in the hook, she was about 8 inches shy of reaching. Dang it. Sighing, she got down and stepped back to stare at the hole she drilled as if it might give her a solution to her problems. Can I help? Ruth looked to her right to see who'd spoken, and her mouth almost fell open. Not only was a tall, gorgeous man walking towards her, but it was someone she knew, or rather, had known back in high school. Mason Baker? Yeah? He looked closer at her. Ruthie Haynes? I didn't recognize you for a minute there. Wow. Ruth blinked. What did wow mean? Not that she wasn't thinking wow about him, but it could have a dozen different meanings. While she had no problem recognizing the popular athletic guy she'd always secretly crushed on, there was no doubt that the last 10 years had made him even more attractive than before, more rugged and masculine. Since she'd only grown rounder and older, she seriously doubted she was having the same staggering effect on him he was having on her. Yeah, wow. So, can I help you? If you want to, you'll definitely be able to reach better than me. Can you screw this in up there? She handed him the hook, careful to hold it out so that it was easy for him to take without their fingers touching. He took it and climbed up the ladder with perfect, graceful balance that she envied. It only took him a few seconds to have it screwed in. What are you hanging? I might as well help with that too while I'm up here. Ruth reached for the sprig of mistletoe that she'd set on the bench next to her door. It was only when she handed it to him that she realized how awkward it was. Would he notice that they were both under the mistletoe? Praying he didn't, Ruth took 2 quick steps back. Mason looked at her funny, and one of his eyebrows quirked up. He also smirked a little, but didn't say a word. When it was secured on the hook, he got down and stepped back to stand next to her. Does that look right to you? Yeah, it looks great. Laying booby traps for your customers, huh? Ruth laughed. Hey, I'm not above dirty tricks. I'll have to remember that when I'm up and running. Wait, you're the new store owner? Grinning, Mason nodded and pointed to where the 2 workers from the sign company were up on their ladders with a huge sign between them. Come look. Ruth walked across the street with him and read the words on the sign. The chocolate box. You're selling candy? Handmade gourmet chocolates. Ruth's curiosity ratcheted up. At the same time, her stomach dropped. The last thing she needed was competition for the sweet-toothed crowd, especially right next door. And you thought setting up shop next to a cookie place was a good idea? Mason's eyebrows scrunched together. It wasn't my first choice, but it was the only place that had a lease available. Are you worried about the competition? No. Ruth bit her bottom lip. This is going to be tough. Her ideal neighbor would have sold savory food or maybe flowers. Now people were going to have to choose which store to walk through to get their sugar fix, and there was nothing she could do about it. When do you open? My soft opening is tonight. I've got some stock ready, and I'd be stupid to miss out on the crowds that will be here tonight, won't I? You would indeed. But have you done any advertising yet? I haven't seen anything. No, I've only been sure this was happening for 3 weeks. It's been so hectic trying to get set up that I didn't get anything figured out for that until a few days ago. My ads will start going out starting this weekend, but I'm going to be passing out free samples and coupons tonight, so I hope that helps. What do you think? His expression showed signs of concern, as if he cared about her opinion, which was just crazy. They hadn't seen each other since before they were old enough to vote, and he certainly didn't pay much attention to her then. But this was one business owner to another. I think that's a great idea, actually. Good luck. Ruth checked for cars and crossed back to the other side of the street. Mason jogged after her. It's great seeing you again, Ruthie. Ruth, she called back at him. Oh, okay. I look forward to being your neighbor. Me too. She just hoped her lie sounded sincere. This was going to be bad for business, and things were a struggle as it was. She'd wanted to hire a 3rd employee to help with the holiday crowds, but now she changed her mind. She couldn't take the risk. So no free time for her this month, after all. As soon as she went inside and the door shut behind her, she let out a growl she'd been holding in for the last few minutes. Hearing it, Crystal jerked up from her crouching position behind the cookie cases. What's wrong? You're never going to believe what's going in next door. Crystal grinned. You're right. Just tell me. The chocolate box. Cool. I love chocolate. Everybody loves chocolate. And there's no way people are going to buy chocolate and cookies at the same time. Why not? I would. Ruth rolled her eyes. Crystal would and not gain a pound. They're opening up tonight for the lighting event. The sign is going up now. Ooh, can I go see? Sure, I'll take over for you. Ruth went to the back and washed her hands and put on a pair of plastic food service gloves. As she finished filling the cookie case Crystal had been working on, she couldn't help but think about Mason. How was it possible that his smile still had the power to make it grow all melty inside, even when she was thoroughly annoyed and worried? She really did need to get a grip, but that wasn't the only thing she didn't understand. How in the world had Mason Baker, of all people, gotten into the chocolate business? And if he'd made his own chocolate, she was going to have to pin him down and make him tell her the whole story. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been totally focused on basketball and girls. She was quite sure the only experience he'd had with chocolate back then came out of a candy bar wrapper. Maybe she shouldn't have been so determined to stay off social media. No doubt most of the kids from their graduating class were still in touch with each other, but she'd been too glad to escape from all the nosy, judgmental cliques of high school to get much involved with Facebook or Instagram. In fact, if it wasn't for Crystal taking care of it and for her shop, Sugar Lips would be impossible to find on the internet. When Crystal came in a few minutes later, her bright, toothy smile was in evidence. Oh man, you didn't tell me the owner was so hot. Crystal narrowed her eyes. And do not tell me you didn't notice. Oh, I noticed. I've been noticing since I was like 12 years old. We went to school together. No way. Isn't he new around here? I've never seen him before. He's been gone for 10 years, and let me tell you, if there's one thing that man is going to be good at, it's beating the competition. I've watched him in too many basketball games to doubt that for a minute, which means we're going to have to pick up our game. Okay, but how? We've been trying to figure that out for weeks. He's going to be giving out samples tonight, so we better do it too. Too bad we don't have time to print out some coupons. I could make some up really quick using some graphics we use for your ads. How many do you want? Not tons. We'll just give them to people who buy something. Maybe 1 cookie free when you buy 6. Sounds good. I'm on it. Crystal's cheerful tone frustrated Ruth. Didn't she understand how potentially disastrous it was going to be to have Mason Baker right next door? Yes, so it's amazing to read out loud for everybody to critique. And I mean everybody. But let's hear what you guys have to say.
All right, I'll go first. I loved how you introduced your character first and you introduced her goal right away. She wants to be the top business selling treats for the holiday season, and she really wants to make her business be really good for the holiday season. And then right after that, you introduce our love interest character, which is awesome. You give us some instant attraction, but it wasn't too strong. So I didn't think it was over the top or anything. And I loved the hanging the mistletoe. That was awesome. And then right after that, you introduce the conflict between the two of them, which is perfect. And I'm really excited to read this book because I think you're off to a great start. I really didn't see anything that I would change or suggest, changing for this one, just because I felt like it's right in line with what your audience wants. So that's what I had to say.
Okay, am I cutting out or am I? Okay,
No, I can just never find my mute button. Thank you, Victory. That was
okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with Victorine. I thought it was great. I'm trying to find something, to say to help you fix it, but you just did a good job. I'm like, oh, this is why my chapter would have been great, because there'd be lots of things to fix. So I could see that. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought the mistletoe thing was fun, and how you the whole the secret crush from her past, that's like instantly interests me in the story, because I just love that trope. And you just brought the tropes right in right from the beginning. And then I liked the thought about where she's like, yeah, he's like still super hot, and she's like, and the only thing that I've gotten is older and a little rounder, or whatever you said. That was funny. And then I liked how when they both kind of noticed that they were under the mistletoe together, and the little smirk that he gave her, I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I liked how you added the conflict right from the beginning, that they're both competing for kind of the same customers, and that sets up the rest of the story. And then also you did a good job of showing the different social classes, like kind of where how she sees herself and how she sees him. And so that's another trope that you've got in there. And then I loved the friend was there to comment on how hot he was, and then how she's like, oh, yeah, believe me, I noticed like how hot he was. So I like hot guys, so that has me interested even more. So I thought it was great. Sorry, I don't have anything bad to say.
It's impossible not to smile when Judy's critiquing you, even if she's saying something critical. Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so I loved that you brought the mistletoe right in at the beginning. That was perfect. You did say she was finally going to find out who did it, but that was going to take a little while longer, and that just jumped out at me because she was finally going to find out, but it was going to take a little longer. It felt kind of like an oxymoron sort of thing, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I felt that when I was reading it too.
It was just kind of funny.
passing of time had like a hiccup in it there.
Yeah, it was kind of like, yes, we're gonna find out. Oh no, we're not. Okay. I like that you named Mason Baker. I thought that was pretty funny, and that she's Hanes because of the underwear. I was like, you probably didn't think of that, but I was like,
It's spelled different.
Oh, probably. I just thought she's the baker, but his last name is Baker.
Well, exactly. So when she gets married, she's gonna be a baker.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I totally planned that.
That's awesome.
I'm gonna
like
let
that.
the cheese just roll
I
right
picked
through.
up on it.
And you just gave us the spoiler alert. They're gonna end up together at the end.
What?
Oh no, I shouldn't have. Okay.
So I also like that they both ended up under the mistletoe. That was really cute. Now, I don't think I got from the beginning that she owned the bakery. Did you say she owned it? Because I know she talked a lot about the way it looked and the way it was decorated, and that she maybe you just maybe you just hinted to it, but I didn't pick up that she owned it. And so then I was like,
Yeah.
I thought she was more like I don't know, to me, having someone put something up outside would be something more like the worker does. Maybe that's where I got it from.
So just contextual clues didn't do that enough. So I should go in and state that it's
Well, I
her.
think because you didn't actually say, it was just
Well,
like being this close to the real estate was good and stuff like that. I don't know if you like it was intentional that she like I didn't pick up on that. I didn't.
So the second paragraph said Ruth's little shop, which you're not seeing it, you're just hearing it. But I could definitely go in and underscore that, like being the owner of her own shop, is stressful or something like that. It's just so it's spelled out really clearly.
Okay,
So
perfect.
that's a good point.
Now, a long time ago, me and my husband, we thought it would be super cool to open a bed and breakfast. And they told us to open a bed and breakfast, you should not go to a town that has no bed and breakfasts. It's better for you to go to a town that has 6 bed and breakfasts and open a bed and breakfast to be number 7. So I'm having a little hard time believing that she's so upset that he's opening up because it's not in direct competition. She's a baker, he's a chocolatier. If anything, it's like us and Amazon. Like you end up on my also bots, it's actually helping both of us. Because if he opens up and is like, I only have chocolate, well, what if that person wants chocolate and cookies? They can go to both places. So she's banking on his advertising too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's actually the direction that the story goes, and that's something that she learns as the story progresses, is that like right now she's stressed out because she's had a monopoly. So there's other bakeries in town, which you find out as the story goes on, because there's this whole big catering event that they're putting bids in for, and they talk about the other bakeries and places in town that would be submitting bids. And so there are other shops in town, but she's had the monopoly on Main Street for all this time. And so she doesn't want to lose the monopoly. So maybe I can bring out that it's
I guess I just
like
don't know
her
how
spot.
a chocolatier store would be in direct competition with a bakery. Because
like if
two
you
different
wanted
things.
something sweet, would you go in and buy a cookie and then, I want chocolate too? Some people might, but a lot of people would probably pick one or the other. And that's
Right.
kind of what she's thinking, is that people are either going to pick cookies or they're going to pick chocolate.
So then I'm going to be completely honest, then it makes me think she's not a very good business owner if she doesn't understand how it's actually going to help her to be there. So just follow with my train of thought here for a second. So I want there to be another reason why Mason Baker opening his shop across the street from her makes her angry. Like, it shouldn't just be that she's worried about the competition. Like, I want her to be like mad. Like, you always win, or you always do everything perfect, and I finally get something and now you've opened up next to me. Like, it doesn't have to be that like antagonistic, but I want there to be, because she has the history with him, right? And here would be a perfect place to bring in that history because of her reaction to him opening up the store next to her. Not only is she like, oh, now you're going to take some of the sweet tooth people, but now you're like rubbing salt in a wound. That sort of thing.
Okay,
like,
so do you
that
want
person
it
I can get on board with.
So do you want it on a personal level? Because there was something else that was kind of playing in my head as far as, because the shop isn't across the street, it's right next door. And she had hoped at some point to get the lease on both buildings and expand her store. Yeah. And so by him taking that lease, then he was taking that opportunity away from her. So I was kind of considering throwing that in there too.
That's perfect. I like that.
You like that idea?
Yes, and then, but I want there to also to be something in their past. What happened in their past that she didn't act on her feelings, or she saw something, or he picked something and got picked over her, and now he's doing this again inadvertently. Because then to me, I'm like, okay, I can get on board with this girl because, yeah, she's upset and that he opened up, but now she's even more upset because he did blah, 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 blah. And so that I can connect those dots better. Instead of being like, well, here she doesn't really know how to run a business and how this could actually be good for her. But you know what I mean? Like,
okay. So about the business thing, yes, she's pretty young and she's only had this business for, well, I think I've had it for like 2 years, but I can take it down to 1. So she's still really learning what she's doing. She's definitely still a newbie, and so I think that's definitely part of the premise there. But what if it was just a matter of like the popular people kind of thing, like always getting what
Well,
they
you hint
wanted and
at
not
it.
having to
You do
Huh?
a perfect job of hinting at it because you say when Mason
Yeah.
shoots for something, he scores. And that
Right.
I want to bring out just a little bit more to have that tension just a little bit more in the story.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that was like the perfect way to like slide that in about how she really feels about Mason and how she's going to have to get over not only him owning the store, because all she has to do is see one night of sales for her pickup at the same time he's selling, and that conflict is gone, right? If like a
Yep.
couple of days and she's realized, oh, he's opened up, but my sales aren't tanking, she's going to know this is okay. But if she's always just that little irritation in behind her, that's like, oh, like now you're helping me, or you know what I mean? Like it's slowly eating away at her, this other issue. I think that will be just that much more powerful. And I'm sure as you're going along, you're adding that in, because the first chapters are always the hardest to figure out how to get that stuff, because I'm sure it's added. Now I just want you to come back and weave that back into that first chapter, because the way it stands right now, it just doesn't quite feel tensiony or strong enough for me to be like, yes,
See,
I want
there
her
you
to
go,
kill
ladies and
Mason.
gentlemen. Every book, there it is. So, okay, so my question now is, like, should I have her fail for a little while? Should he be like the hot sensational store for like a week or so that her sales do go down?
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
while?
Yeah.
Okay, because I haven't written it that way, so I can go back in and add that in so that it keeps amping up like this sense of competition between them and her frustration and her worry and all this stuff, and directing it all towards him.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
you're
good.
creating that divide wider and wider and wider, because it's not only just about sales. Now it's about her feelings and her pride are now
Right.
getting busted down.
Right. Okay. And so part of the thing I like to do during the critique too is when I am curious about like how something's worked, even if nobody's mentioned it, I like to ask about it.
Uh-huh.
So, what do you guys think about the curvy girl sort of thing? Is it strong enough? Because I don't want it to become like a major issue, but I do want to have a curvier character in this book. Was it just right? Too much? Not enough?
Yeah, I liked it. Because I don't think it was too much. I don't think it was too little, and I think it makes sense with her. If you're around cookies all day, you're gonna eat some. So it's like,
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's a trope. It's a trope that I've seen, so I think it works.
I would just
Okay.
make sure it comes to a resolution at the end. So if it's going to be a major problem, she can't. To me, I would be unsatisfied if she didn't come to some sort of personal acceptance of herself, because it is something that she sees through a certain lens.
Yeah.
So make sure that covers up. I did have just one more comment or question.
Go for it.
So is there a reason why at the end of the chapter you talk a lot about the internet and her inability to be on the internet? It just felt like a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, if it's not working the way it is, I can reconfigure it. But social media plays a huge part in this story, because what ends up happening is that somebody catches a picture of them sort of like standing off in front of their shops during one of their kind of like fight things, and it goes onto the town Facebook page as the two owners are, facing off, and it kind of becomes this little local sensation. And so everybody kind of latches onto the fact that these two are competing against each other. And so, part of it is that I want people to know why she had no idea how he became a chocolate person or all this sort of stuff, because most people kind of keep somewhat tabs on where people's careers and lives go on Facebook, and I wanted her to be kind of completely clueless. So there was that reason for it, and then there was also the reason why she's going to be kind of behind the game with social media as that kind of amps up, if that makes sense.
So I felt like as you got right before you brought that up in the chapter, I felt like that was the ending place of the chapter. And then it just kind of kept going. And it was almost like you were just telling me instead of showing me. So like at the beginning of the next chapter she's in, you could have her trying to figure out if she can't remember her password to log into social media. That might be a better way of explaining something like that. Because I did like it once the shop owner assistant, the assistant girl, saw Mason and commented on how hot he was. That was great. But I got a little lost and confused on the whole internet, social history. It just felt too much. So I almost wanted her to come in and be frustrated, have the shop owner girl look over, see him, be like, oh my gosh, he is hot. And then she's like, yeah, but Mason, blah, 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 end the scene. And then all these a couple extra things could be shown in a different chapter. I don't think us knowing that she doesn't do social media at this moment, or her wondering about Mason's past at this moment, really isn't like necessary.
What if I take it out and move just a smidge of it to where she sees him again for the first time?
That might
Where
be good.
because that could be where she's thinking, you know, well, of course I don't know what he looks like. I haven't seen him for 10 years. And it could be like, maybe I should have stayed on social book. I just made up a new
There you go.
a new thing, people.
You don't have to worry about trademarks anymore. You can just
It won't get outdated either because it's brand new.
Yeah.
you're ahead of your time. People are gonna be on like the internet looking up what's social book. How am I not on social book?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
a good
really
idea.
great.
Okay.
I just
I'll
got
probably
a
do that.
little bored at the end where I was like, I thought this chapter was gonna end.
I did too, and I was reading it. So yeah.
Oh, good. That's the way it works. So, but other than that, it was great. It was really, really, really good. I loved Sugar Plums
Okay.
and Mistletoe. I think it's going to be really fun. And it reminds me of like Chocolat, the movie. And it reminds me of what You've Got Mail. The only reason why You've Got Mail that wasn't like copacetic was because he was going to bid her down, which is why that was bad for her. But I can't see him bidding chocolates down having that effect on cookies. Because it's like meat or, you know, like some people hate cookies and love chocolate and some people hate chocolate and love cookies. So it's not exactly apples to apples in that sense. But yes, I love anything with food. So great.
All right. Well, great. I hope that was helpful for everybody as much as it was for me.
Then that's
And
how
we'll
it
just have-
normally goes. Normally, me and Michelle are normally the rougher critiquers, I think, of the group.
Unless
You're like, it was great.
no,
Yeah,
Victorine
it's
will nail me if I've messed something up, though. There have been times when Victorine's been the one that's really nailed me on something.
It's good to sandwich us, you know. Nice at first, harder in
Yeah,
the
we
middle,
should
nice at
Amy
the
in the
end.
middle.
Yeah, you can go at the end. And then bring it back up. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
We
Okay,
did have
awesome.
some questions on the feed. Do we want to run those over real quick?
Yeah, so I think I was supposed to do that
I'm going to
tonight,
read
wasn't
this.
I?
Michelle, do you
You-
want me about?
No, you go ahead. I've done enough talking, so go for it.
Okay. Danielle Tanhill asks, I'm wondering how much more of the story you have written at this point. If it's a lot, would you start over fresh or just weave the changes throughout what you've already written?
Is that for Michelle?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, that's for Michelle.
She's
You're muted.
written more. I'll answer for her.
Okay. Say it again, because you were breaking up a little bit for me.
Okay, sorry. I'm wondering how much more of the story you have written at this point. If it's a lot, would you start over fresh or just weave the changes throughout what you've already written?
Yeah,
So it must have made it sound like I told you to change it.
rewrite my story.
Rewrite the whole
So
thing.
one thing I've definitely learned, this is I think my 15th or 16th book now, is that edits are not as hard to make as you think they are. Once you just learn how to do it, it's actually a pretty seamless process to do things like Amy has suggested that I do. So right now I am about 20,000 words in, so I'm probably about 2/3 of the way for my goal mark, and you know, these are easy changes to make. You cut a few paragraphs out, put a few new ones in, and you're good to go. So another change that I have gotten from my developmental editor is that I originally had him living with his grandma to save money, And we even talked about it as a group, and we were kind of like, yeah, you can maybe make that work. And she's like, no, you can't make that work. There's absolutely no way that you can make your hero attractive and have him living with his grandma. And so that's one of the things I have to go in and cut out and put him in his own apartment. I was just trying to stack all these reasons why he couldn't pursue her. And I thought, well, he's just ashamed of his, so no, that one's going away too. So like the changes that Amy's made really will just only require a couple of paragraphs changes. And it's amazing what a few words can do.
Right. And when I give critiques, I try to be very specific, and I try to say, this is what I was confused about, and this is where I could see it going. When people give you critiques where you're like, your voice is off, that's such a abstract critique. You don't know where to even start to fix that. Like, how do you change the way you write all over? Like, that's not very specific. But if I go, you said this, and it was confusing, this is what I think you might have meant to say. And they can say, yes, you're right. That's exactly what I meant to say or I meant to do. It makes it a lot easier to make that change than just to be abstract about it.
It's super important not to be married to your words, to understand that they can be changed and it's okay and life will go on. And so don't get too attached to anything. And then once you're able to go in and sift through, what you can fix, you'll find that changes happen really easily. And so you don't have to completely gut something, to just, it's kind of like putting a couple of stones in a river can change the way the current's flowing. You don't have to move the whole river. So,
and I think it's also easier because we like to critique early on in the writing process, and so it's easier to make the changes, and you don't get as attached to it. But in my other, my earlier days, with my first couple of books, I had written the whole book, and they'd been written for a while before I had them critiqued, and so it was a lot harder to make some of those changes. So, yeah, just be open to it, but realize the time does make it harder. So it's good to get advice at the beginning.
Exactly. Because first chapters are the worst. They're the worst for all of us. I mean, my first chapter morphs and changes as I write, or I'll be writing. I'll be like, yep, I got to go back and add all that stuff in because it's not going to make sense. It's working now for the story, but that's why taking notes and editing is amazing. And Steve McGuire says, love your first chapter. Maybe the past personal thing could be something to do with the social media, that she felt something with him and her about Instagram or something. So that could be something interesting to add in for a reason why she stays off social media and add attention.
It would require me to do some maths.
Some math?
To figure out when Facebook and Instagram were actually becoming popular compared to
I was
10 years ago when they were in high
college when Facebook came out, and now I'm 32. So
yeah, it was like 2007 when it was first getting started. I got it in 2008. No, I got it in 2007.
But then it's not. It wasn't Facebook. It was MySpace. So
MySpace was
throw that in there.
We're dating ourselves. but that's something I would have to figure out is.
But if it's only been 10 years, Facebook was Facebook. So.
But what about Instagram?
Like 20 something. So
Instagram,
about 27, 28.
Yeah, Instagram is more recent. I think that's more like a few years.
I don't think Instagram would work.
But it's social book, so it can be whatever you want.
That's right.
Okay. Social book in all my books.
Sarah Fellon Falk asks, have you already talked about how to find a critique group? And we did. So wait till we're done and you can watch it again. But we're happy you joined us. So
I think there's another one.
Yep. This person says, what do you think about Michael Cooper saying on the Science Fiction Fantasy podcast that the market is already saturated and that it's going to get harder for authors? It got me really depressed. I say to that, if that was true, then Amazon and Netflix would not be putting out Christmas movies because they would think Hallmark had the monopoly. So if big corporations are spending lots of money to create movies to put out, that another corporations already have the market on then I think we're good. But Victorine loves to talk about this, so I'm going to pass it to her.
I would say that is your challenge to make your book better than everybody else's, because you can grow your audience by what you write. You can't get the same experience just picking up any free book as you would reading Harry Potter or anything else. So make your book unique enough and make it better enough that everybody wants you.
Yes, because let's face it, there are a lot of not very good books out there that are clogging it up. So just make yours incredible and learn how to find your market and get it to rise to the top, and then you'll find your readers. And it's, that the top level of any market is always going to be competitive, and everything under that is kind of just a wash. So you just need to find your market and get up there where you're visible, and you'll do just as good now as you would have. In fact, there's probably more readers because of how many people are learning to read ebooks. Amy saw that the number one purchased product on Black Friday was the Kindle Fire.
Yep.
So, people are still buying them.
I did a research
and more
recently
generations.
About generations, and actually 18 to 22, so Generation Z actually are bigger readers than anybody in any other generation. It goes down by generation. I think it's because we get busier and have harder time to read, but now people have access to reading on their phones. They have access to reading to the Kindles. And I think that's a little doomsday speaking. And if anything, he's probably just trying to get you to stop writing so that he does better. That's smart. We should say that. Nobody reads anymore. Don't write books. Romance is dead. No one will read it. But I think that's kind of crazy. It's like people saying, what do you think about Amazon saying it's going to close its doors? It's like, well, if the internet goes away, I think everything goes away at that point. So I think it's like dystopian issues at that point. So.
And let's face it, we're writing because we want to write. If you can walk away from it because you think the market's not going to be there to make you any money, then, maybe you aren't writing for all of the right reasons. We all like to make money. We love to make money. But writing is part of us. It's part of, we're driven by the art as much as by, the business side of it.
Yep. I agree. All right, we should probably wrap it up. Judy, you're muted.
Is that all the questions?
That's all the
Steve
questions.
McGuire wants to know what our motivations for writing are, and I kind of just touched on that.
Yeah.
Money and creativity.
Pretty much.
And really mine is the fact that in the internet world, my kids can't destroy anything. So I can create this perfect aligned world that my kids have no access to, and I don't have to come downstairs and everything is trashed. It's like,
oh my gosh. I should
Right?
turn my laptop around and show what my kids did to my living room tonight while I was working.
It's crazy.
Oh my
It's like
gosh.
this one place I can go and be somebody else that has a perfect life because my kids make a mess of everything.
Awesome. Okay, so next week we will be talking about author collaborations, specifically writing in an anthology versus a multi-author series. So make sure to stay tuned and join us next week for that. And so we're just thankful for you for staying here with us, staying up late, even with all of the technical difficulties that my computer has been causing us. And if you like what you hear, subscribe below and join our Facebook group. We are called the Writing Gals. And like we've said it weeks before, it's not just for girls, for females. Everyone is welcome. Just we are the Writing Gals. So that's why it's called that. But make sure to join it. We'll be happy to meet you and get to know you better on there.
And
so
subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe below. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks for staying up late.
Bye.